You're listening to East Wave FM. This is the Chat Network with our esteemed guest, Mr. Zaid Ismail in the house. How are you doing, Zaid?
Hey, off to a good start, I think.
Okay, that's great. Yes, it is always eventful here in studio, and we promise our listeners we bring them a vibe. Do you agree?
Oh, definitely. And today, I think, yeah, some people might need to take a sedative before we start our conversation because it's going to be triggering.
Oh, that's a warning. That is a warning, and I am all for it. I'm telling you, I am in for this conversation. So we discussed that we would be talking about addiction,
Yes.
right? What is addiction, Zaid?
I think in simple terms, and I like to keep things simple so that we can relate to it as humans, right? Because we're not some lab rats. Addiction is something we can't help ourselves with. We just need it. But why we need it is what's important. So I'm more focused on why we need that addictive behavior or that addictive habit rather than the fact that we're addicted.
You know, last week you said something very interesting about addiction,
Hmm.
and it was the relationship between a person and their father, something to do with the father wound.
Yes, wouldn't go as far as saying it's father wound because
Mm.
that wound kind of imagery it distorts it. It's related to our relationship with our father and how it is that we believe our father had space for us or thought of us and why. Right, the why is always important. So if I believe that I was not significant enough to my father and I didn't have any other way of building up my sense of self-esteem to believe that I am significant in other ways, then that will affect me. And that's what shapes my self worth and my self esteem and my behavior as I go through life. And this is true for both men and women. It's not just the relationship between a son and the father, right? Because this relationship between the person and their father, I've seen it play out on both sides of the gender kind of divide. Whether you young man or young woman, or even an elderly man or an elderly woman, if you have that kind of difficulty with addictive behaviors and addiction itself, then that's because there's a it, I wouldn't say unhealed wound because that again
Mhm.
talks to a lot of stigma, right?
Mm.
It's about not realizing what impact that relationship had on you and how it informed your sense of self.
Mhm. What is your view on treatment?
Treatment is a coping mechanism more than anything else.
Mhm.
And I know this is probably something that's not going to be a very popular opinion, like many of my opinions, but let's work with it. From everything I've seen, and I've worked with many substance abuse cases over the years, right? But from everything I've seen in all my research, it's always pointed to one thing and one thing only, that rehab and treatment protocols, it's a coping mechanism to prevent you from slipping.
Mhm.
It doesn't take away the reason why it is that you're inclined to slip in the first place. That's why the recovery rates are so low, right? That's why the relapses are so high. It's because you can only go so far with a coping mechanism. And I think that's one of the critical things around this whole discussion about addiction is the coping mechanism approach, right? And if you are adopting coping mechanisms in life, and this is across the board, not just about addiction, about anything in life, if you're doing things well because you're coping with it, you have methods and steps to help you cope with things, be careful because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that coping mechanism is going to fail you.
When the coping mechanism is going to fail you. There's a lot of talk about triggers in addiction.
Yeah, but we all got triggers, but triggers are just our insecurities.
Mhm.
Now, we can either feel triggered and then we offload our accountability for how we react, or we can recognize that something upsets us.
Mhm.
I mean, why do we have so much of labels and so much of terminology that just keeps detaching us and distancing us from the human experience of it? I feel triggered. Okay, why do you feel triggered? Well, I feel triggered because there's something that makes me feel uncomfortable, or it reminds me of an unpleasant experience, or it's something that I feel really vulnerable around, and that's why it triggers me. The fact that you feel triggered is not the important thing. Why you feel so unsettled is what's important.
When it comes to our modern day approach to families, like coming out and saying our loved one has a problem but does not want to get help.
That's because we've loaded such a massive stigma around needing to get help. If I tell you you need to get help, I'm telling you that there's something wrong with you. It's got nothing to do with anything I'm doing. It's got nothing to do with the environment. It's got nothing to do with the experiences of your life. It's just got to do with the fact that there's something faulty about you. You need to get help.
That stigma is exactly what prevents people from coming out and getting help, right?
Yes and no. There's more to it, right? I think the stigma has a major role to play because of how it makes us seem. So, what will people think of us if they know that we're going to get help or something like that? Which in itself adds to the original problem, which is that it's not that I need help, it's that I need you people to understand me.
Mm-hmm.
So the more I feel misunderstood or rejected or isolated or excluded from the spaces that are important to me and from the people's lives who are important to me, the more the stigma of get help is going to nail me, because I'm already feeling as if I'm being treated unfairly, and now I must go and admit to it being my fault for being treated unfairly.
And I think that also when it comes to people saying, I want to get help, but I don't want my family to know.
That again tells you that the family environment is problematic.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's so much of shame around being wrong, then that's where the problem lies.
Mm.
The fact that admitting fault comes with so much of baggage, that's the problem. So it's not about, because we're human, we're going to get things wrong. We will. Even the stuff that we advise others about to be good about things, and that we'll get that wrong in our own way because life happens. We get distracted, we get sidelined, we get hit from nowhere without having an expectation about something happening to us. And when we're overwhelmed as humans, we're going to get things wrong. We're going to lose our sense of composure. We're going to have a lapse of judgment or whatever it is. And when that happens, that will test the integrity and the quality of your support structure in your relationships.
Mm.
So the people who have a negative opinion of you, they can look for that as an opportunity to point out how it is that, yeah, you think you're always right, but look what you did.
True.
Right?
Very true.
Now, if I know because of experience that that's what I can expect, then I'm less likely to want to admit fault when someone has a legitimate claim against me, because then I'm going to go into defense mode, and I'm going to explain to them like excessively about why it is that it's not my fault, even though I know I was wrong, but it's not my fault.
Mm-hmm. That's a very important one, and I also want to highlight, when somebody, for example, says, I didn't want to get help because I didn't know how everyone was going to react. And then when I came out and got help and said I need help, they acted out exactly the way I feared.
Yes. And unfortunately, the exception is that I was pleasantly surprised by how supportive my family was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's where we're going wrong. Because a weak family creates a weak society. Right? The community, if we're finding cracks and flaws and things that lack in the community structure, then we need to look to the families.
Mm-hmm.
Because the families are what build that community. So if my family unit is one that is prone to judgment and isolation and exclusion and punitive responses and things like that, then it's not going to be a space in which anyone's going to want to grow. Everyone's going to try to be as safe as possible for not being seen as trying to be too good, as trying to think like they know too much or something like that. And that's how we dumb things down. We suppress creativity, we suppress exploration, curiosity, all of those things, because you're only allowed to grow as fast as the people around you are growing. If you outgrow them, then there's something wrong with you.
That's very
You think
powerful.
you're too bad. You think you're too good for us and all of that.
Yeah.
And that's because we have this almost like an endemic insecurity in our identities as a community.
An endemic insecurity in ourselves as a community. So there's a lot of talk. We know drugs are a symptom of a problem.
Yes.
Right? And many people attribute childhood trauma to their addiction. What would you say about that?
I disagree. I disagree for one very good reason, and that is that if childhood trauma was genuinely the reason for it, then by default, every single person who experienced childhood trauma would have a drug problem.
What about partners? Because one of the common things is my partner is a trigger for me. When we argue, when we're in conflict, that is the time I am prone to using. What would you say about that?
We need to understand why that becomes a trigger and why it resonates with childhood experiences, not necessarily childhood trauma, right? And that's what I'm saying. I'm not being flippant about the seriousness of childhood trauma. But if we're going to frame everything in our life that is unpleasant and that made us feel bad or made us feel hurt or made us feel like we weren't important or good enough, if we're going to frame all of that as trauma, then when trauma really hits, what do we call that? Right? Because then we're going to just take everything and lump it into trauma, and the next thing you know, we're going to come up with a grading system: level 1 trauma versus level 5 trauma versus level 10 trauma, and all of that nonsense. And all we're talking about is that something happened that was unpleasant, that was uncalled for, that was cruel, even. And what we did with it, how we responded to that, is what determines what impact it has on us going forward. And that's why some people who experience childhood trauma, so to speak, or childhood experiences that are really difficult or unpleasant, they'll rise above it if they don't have an expectation for someone to recognize how bad it is, or they don't need that. And others who are prone to wanting everyone to see why it is that they must make space for them because, like, you know how bad I've got it.
Yeah.
They're the ones that will feel a need to find substances or other addictive behaviors to be able to lean on so that they can cope with that experience, that emotional experience.
You're talking, and obviously, when people come at us and say, this is my issue, it's not me, it's them. It's not me, it's them. There's a victimhood. There's a kind of, like you said, accountability is an allergy, right?
Yes.
And you have people saying, it's not me. Literally, I can stop anytime.
Yeah.
I can stop at any time. That's what they say. And there's the big word of denial. How do we cope with people in denial?
When someone, just to get your first point about how it is, it's not me, it's them.
Yes.
My response is always simple, right? And like I said, we need to keep it simple. We're humans, we're not lab rats. If you say it's not you, it's them, my question is, if you know what they're about, why do you still expect more from them? If you're claiming that it's not you, it's them, you know it's them, you can prove it's them, you see them every day treating you that way or not listening to you or not taking you seriously, why is it that you're not adjusting your expectation? Why are you asking a fridge to be a stove?
Why are you asking a fridge to be a stove? I
It's
mean,
simple.
you're just hurting yourself with your own expectations.
Right, and that means that you're more invested in being accepted than you are in being yourself.
That is powerful, and I think that's a point that we all, whether it's not just about addiction, this applies to everyone in general.
Yes, everyone. This is where self-esteem comes from, right? Do I value who I am and what value I can create? Do I value that more than what I think others think of me? And if someone has an opinion of me, how do I, in my individual capacity, determine if that opinion has merit or not? Not whether they're allowed to have an opinion of me or not. It's like, if I'm invested in growth, I want to be a better person, I want to achieve great things in my life and all of that, then when I hear someone criticizing me, I need to consider first if there's merit in the criticism before I think you're just being malicious because you don't like me.
What would the merit be?
The merit would be like if I'm saying that I want to be able to get people to understand me better, but every time someone comes to me and they try to talk to me, I'm in defense mode. I'm redirecting attention to everyone else's behavior. I'm not going to help them to understand me better. I'm trying to get them to understand why everyone else is a problem. So then if someone comes and criticizes me and says you're defensive, I'm going to, if I don't look for the merit in that, to see, well, what is it about how I'm behaving that comes across as defensive? Then I might realize that, okay, maybe I'm not answering the question they're asking me. I'm not telling people what it is I need them to understand about me. I'm always redirecting attention to what I have a problem with. Then I realize that I'm giving them a very good answer to the wrong question. So when someone criticizes me for being defensive, then I have to consider, well, why would they have reason to see me as defensive?
Yeah.
And then I need to help them to understand why it is that I either am defensive or why that isn't defensiveness. But I can't just dismiss it as you're just being critical or you're just being nasty or you don't understand me.
Investigate.
Investigate.
Be
You have to be
open.
curious,
Yeah.
right? And that curiosity relies on you wanting to be better. It's not reliant on you being able to be curious. We're all capable of being curious.
And also being curious about yourself. You've got to be open to the fact that you could be wrong.
Yes.
And then horrifying gasp, like, oh, how do I entertain the possibility? Because it does make people vulnerable as well.
Yes.
You've got to be open to being vulnerable and know that not every disagreement is a confrontation.
But here's the thing about vulnerability, right? Who determines that you're vulnerable? You or the people around you?
Good question.
So if I feel vulnerable, it's because I believe there's something about me that's weak and fragile.
Yeah.
And then I make other people responsible for tiptoeing around that and handling that with kid gloves because I'm vulnerable. And my emotions are important. And you must create space for my emotions and all of that. Then who's creating space for the people that are creating space for you?
True. You've got to be you. It's a give and take.
Yes.
As much as you expect, you've got to be able to give that as well. You've got to give that space.
So you have to be towards others what you're demanding them to be towards you.
True.
And
Very,
that's where it gets really not complicated, but very uncomfortable.
Of course.
Right? Because okay, but then whose trauma is more important? My trauma or your trauma? Whose trauma must be treated with sensitivity first? Yeah. So if you treat me well, then I'll treat you well.
Yeah, no. Some people are having trauma competitions. I hurt you. Exactly. I'm hurter. I'm hurter. I'm hurtest. So yeah, it is a very it's not just about addiction to substances. It's addiction to people and behaviors.
Yes.
And cycles. It's not like people will think this discussion is about drugs. It's not about drugs.
No, it isn't. I mean, it can even be addiction to scripture. Right? People who go so deeply and so rigidly into scripture. And I'm saying scripture because it's across religions. It's not about being Muslim or Christian or Hindu or whatever. It's when you rely on an authority external to you and that becomes your go-to for every response in life, that's your addiction. Right? So if I rely on retail therapy, that's my addiction. If I rely on having to escape and be alone, but not in a healthy, balanced way, but like every single time I face with conflict, I withdraw. That's an addiction.
People can be addicted to that too,
yes,
right?
Completely. Because that's their safe space. So they create a safe space for themselves so they don't have to deal with what is uncomfortable. So when it comes to addiction, I like to put it in terms of imagine you broke your leg, right? And when you break your leg, you suddenly get more attention and sympathy from people and consideration than what you did when you were just walking normal, right? So now you've got your crutch because you got your leg in a cast and you're recovering and you're healing. Now when you're healed, you're going to go back to being invisible.
Yeah.
So what do? Break your leg again. That's a relapse.
Well, I mean, if you look at children, they also, it's from the early years, from their foundation years, where they're like, okay, if I cry this volume, check how they come running.
Yes.
And, you notice that because you go running and then you see no tears. And I know moms will know what I'm talking about, and dads, because we are teaching them a behavior. We're teaching them a coping mechanism. We're teaching them how to manipulate us.
Right. And that's the thing, right? They're not seeing it as manipulation or coping. They're just seeing it that if I want that, this is how I need to go about getting it.
Yeah.
And that becomes their belief system.
It's cool. I used to watch Dr. Phil when I used to come back from school. And he says, I remember him saying, do not reward bad behavior. So I think that, when I heard that, and now much later, I'm thinking, bad behavior gets rewarded. Like you cry loud enough, you're going to get honey on your dummy, kind of a thing.
But here's the thing, right? If we're not going to reward bad behavior, what should a healthy reward look like for good behavior? Because if the good behavior rewards are unhealthy and it establishes the wrong mindset and the wrong perspective, then it's just as bad as rewarding bad behavior.
Very, very true. Well, listeners, I know you love this interview, 0772804792. Don't be phoning us after the interview and say, please, can I talk to that guy? We are open for any of your questions that you might have. And we want to interact with you more with Zaid when we come back. You're listening to the Chat Network, and we have Zaid Ismail, Coach Zaid Ismail, in our midst. And let me tell you, the conversations off air is just the same. I wish that I could have just kept the mic on the whole time, because the wisdom, man, the wisdom. It's really, really things that we need. It's thought-provoking. And like we said, you flipping the script if you are in Zaid's presence. You are, whatever you think you know, you're going to be upside down, kind of like a turtle. When they are on their shell and they just that's how your thoughts feel. If I could put it into a picture, you just what I was doing fine. And he's like, you are, look, you're upside down. How good are you doing? And this is your normal. No, come back. Zaid, I want to get into something we were discussing about, the stigma and society, and why is it that people they're not forthcoming when they have a problem? What is wrong with us?
I think by and large, and I would love for people to challenge me on this if they disagree, we raise based on fear and compliance. That's it, right? We raise based on fear and compliance, and even though that's our belief that that's how we're establishing a healthy value system in our children, what we don't realize is that we're saying that you comply or else, and the compliance is more important than the value that you're actually adopting. So what that does is it means that inclusion versus exclusion. You're either good enough or you're not good enough. There's no in between. There's no understanding. There's no uniqueness. There's no room for individual expression or thought. So you must comply, or else you being a rebel, or you being self-indulgent, or whatever it is. And that's where we go wrong. Is that we've completely destroyed critical thinking. We've destroyed curiosity. The only time you're allowed to be curious is within the scope of which I allow you curiosity. There's that old brown people kind of proverb that if I wanted your opinion, I'd give it to you.
Ooh, yes. Who asked for your opinion?
Right. So whenever I get I've had enough with my daughters, if I wanted your opinion, I'll give it to you. But you have to allow a healthy level of engagement without feeling attacked. Right. So if someone challenges your view, because of this compliance and this lower self-esteem that I talked about, this insecurity that we generally have, being challenged feels like rejection, feels like condescension, feels like judgment, like criticism. It doesn't feel like healthy engagement. For healthy engagement, you need a healthy self-esteem so that not everything becomes a personal attack. Everything can be seen as, okay, well, even if it's directed at me personally, because I know that's not who I am, I can respond to the merits of what you're saying rather than getting defensive and aggressive about how it is. How can you say something like that about me? How can you think that of me? Right? Because that's where we go wrong. We don't have a healthy self-esteem because our esteem, our sense of self, is derived from how we fit into the people around us.
And people work hard.
Yes, they work hard to do that, right?
Hard.
And that's why you have this patriarchy that is still prevalent. And the interesting thing that I've encountered, and I've had a lot of women who agree with me on this, is that for the most part, women uphold patriarchy more than men. Women establish and support that patriarchy in the family unit. Because, is that I think it's from House of Cards or Suits, I'm not sure which series it was, but there's this statement that they said in there, something about it's your proximity to power that deludes you into believing you wield that power. Right? So if you have a low self-esteem, if you're insecure, you're going to automatically align yourself with what is revered. And if you're raised in a society, in a community where you revere, not just respect, I'm talking of like going beyond respect, beyond recognizing the value and the hierarchy that has purpose and meaning to it. If you revere the head of the hierarchy, the top of the totem pole, then everyone is going to be focused on trying to be as close to the top of the totem pole as possible, which is that whole inclusion thing. I need to belong. I need to fit in. I need to comply so that I can get that authority and get that impact and that influence.
And it's a cycle. You're teaching people actually around you to uphold the patriarchy. And then you're the one that complains about the patriarchy.
So how do we get to a point of patriarchy in the first place? And I think we might be drifting from today's topic of addiction, right? But it talks to it is that if you don't recognize these unhealthy structures that don't have meaningful social bonds, meaningful emotional availability and inclusion, if you don't recognize that that's the state we're in, then when we see addictive behaviors coming into play, we're going to blame the child for being a rebel, rather than recognizing why it is that they're struggling so much to feel included that they need to numb it. And this is where a lot of the addiction cases that I deal with comes in, is that almost every single time you ask them, why did you start? And they say, no, I was just experimenting with my friends. It was social, we were being naughty. And it's usually around the ages of 13 to 15 when they first start experimenting, right? Then my next question to them is, why is it that you made yourself available to that experimentation? Why was it okay for you to allow yourself to experiment with something that you know is detrimental. And that's what tells you, okay, it was self-esteem. Who I wasn't good enough. So this solidarity, this camaraderie, this inclusion in the social circle, peer pressure and all of that nonsense, that is what made it attractive for me to say, yeah, let me just go along with it. Let's be cool, right? But here's the way they got trapped. And I say trapped in inverted commas, is that when they experimented, they didn't expect it to give them that relief from the mental clutter. They didn't expect it to quieten their mind and their thoughts and to give them that escape. And that's when it became addictive, is that I need that escape more than I need to belong.
It's a means to an end.
So then when they sober, all of the things that they've been grappling with and overthinking and just intensely trying to work out in that, all of those feelings and thoughts and emotions and everything else, that becomes overwhelming, and then they need to shut it down. And that's why the addiction remains. And that's why the coping mechanisms is avoidance. Then you get the 3 Ps or the 5 Ps or whatever, and you get the 12 steps and all of those things. And every single one of those things, they direct you towards avoidance, and they frame you as a victim for life.
That is very powerful.
And when you're a victim, the only thing you believe you're capable of doing is coping.
And existing within the parameters of what the program tells you.
Yes. But they don't ever help you to understand why the addiction in the first place. Why did I need to break my leg a second time? Because I didn't have any reason to believe that without the broken leg, I would be receiving that sympathy and compassion and be visible to the people around me.
So your immediate emotional needs of sympathy, compassion, and emotional connection, per se, that is the need. And drugs or breaking your leg was actually the means to get it.
Yes. And that need to feel like you are significant, like who you are, not what you do. Who you are is significant to the people around you. That need is innate in all of us, regardless of your background, regardless of your belief system. Whether you're theist or atheist, it doesn't matter. You need to feel as if who you are matters.
Are we a generation obsessed with, labels?
Yes.
Why do you say we are? It's an addiction as well. We're addicted to labels.
Yes, and what problem does it solve for us?
I don't think it solves anything. I think what it basically does is reinforces the same thinking that keeps us dysfunctional.
So what problem does that solve? If it reinforces thinking that has already gotten us into that space, that reinforcement through the labels assures us that we're right, it can't be us. That's the problem it solves. It solves the problem of checking whether there's something wrong with us or is it everyone else. So the labels come along and it gives you your tribe. So everyone who subscribes to the same label, that's my tribe, that's my people. We got each other's backs because no one knows how bad we got it.
Your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yes.
You have no sympathy for our sake.
Yes.
No sympathy. That's why this works.
If you want to frustrate someone, just don't subscribe to a label. And when they're trying to box you in, and you just don't fall into that space, watch how flabbergasted they'll get about how it is that you think you're too good, or you think you're special and all of this.
Why is it so important to convince everybody that you need to ascribe to my level? You need to say yes to what I'm suggesting. Why is it that you need to validate my experience?
Because I want the validation more than anything else. I want to feel significant. I want to feel as if I have merit. And when you agree with me that my perspective has merit, I feel validated. Right? Now, if I don't know how else to become significant, to feel significant, if I don't know how else to be relevant in my social structure, then I'm going to resort to these things that give me a reason why it is that you owe me more sympathy, you owe me more compassion. Not because of who I am, but because of what I'm going through. And without realizing it, even though that might give us a short-term gain, like we might get more sympathy and more inclusion or more understanding from the people around us, it reinforces the fact that they need to tiptoe around us because of who we are. For a while, as long as our self-awareness is low, that will make us feel good. But the moment we realize that that's how people see us, we crash, and then we go even further into that space. And that's why it looks as if it was always a mental health issue, a mental illness issue, and that's why they're getting worse and worse and worse. No, it's because the original problem wasn't solved. And the original problem was, why do I feel like I'm invisible, like I'm completely irrelevant to the people who matter to me?
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the father relationship, your father is the one who, as they engage with you meaningfully, gives you reason to believe that you are competent and capable of creating value and solving problems. And that's how you navigate and figure out how life works.
Mm.
So if you don't have that, and you grow up questioning whether you are capable, then you're going to walk into a room, and the first thing you're going to question is your competence to be there, rather than just focus on what you need to solve.
100%. Zaid, a lot of programs focus on mindset change. They say you've got to change your mindset.
Yes, that's the easy part.
Hmm.
Well, it's an easy statement rather, because everyone knows it's a mindset change that's needed, but no one is willing to look at why it is that you adopted that unhealthy mindset in the first place. Because to you, I'm not willingly looking to adopt a mindset that is holding me back. To me, I've got a very real struggle, a very real gripe with the world and with life and with my community or with my family. I've got a valid gripe. And if I don't feel understood, or if no one's helping me to understand why I might be wrong, but help me to understand, not tell me what I must think, then I don't feel significant. Then you're just forcing me to comply again. Why are you always making trouble? Why are you always so difficult?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
So everything is moderation, right? You can't go to the nth extreme with everything just because of good intention. So even in that case, if someone is uncooperative, then you need to, as a family unit, decide what is more important. Maintaining the family unit health, and that then becomes a subjective thing about what does a healthy family unit look like, or everyone kind of sacrificing for one person's benefit. And that's where we run into problems, because people struggle to find that balance. But I'm idealistic enough to believe that if we strike a healthy balance, we wouldn't need to make that choice.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we recognize, and this is a painful part for a lot of people to consider, right? But if we recognize that the one who is struggling with addiction in the family, the one who's blatantly problematic in their behavior and that, if we recognize that the reason for that is because of how they feel about their belonging to the family unit, right? Their significance, their inclusion, whether they're respected or appreciated, all of that, right? If we recognize that it's that they're grappling with relative to the family unit, and we also need to recognize that without intending to, without meaning to, the family unit operated in a way without realizing they were excluding.
That's my next thing. Is families are like, but he has everything, or she has everything. We gave them everything.
Yes.
What were they short of in this life, you know?
They were short of emotional availability.
There we go. In short.
Right? Because, like they say, if you show me a kid with a trust fund and I'll show you a tortured soul, it's our ability to accomplish things through our own grit and merit that builds up our self-esteem.
This is so meaningful. This is so meaningful and so helpful. More with Zaid when we come back. Told you, turtle on its back. Yes, dear listeners, this is the Chat Network. You know, this hour goes by so quickly. Yeah, it's something, you know, when you have conversations with somebody and you just like this, our time flies by. That's the conversation with Coach Zaid Ismail. So Zaid, I have a question for you. It might be slightly off topic or wholly, but I'm curious. Like, how frustrating is it for your children to argue with you? Do they get anywhere? Like, I know you see, like, you know, but I first want you to answer. How frustrating is it to have an argument with you?
Well, it can be very frustrating because they usually expect me to just like fall in line with the direction in which they're taking the conversation. And the moment I kind of throw something at them to say, but what about this? It's like, huh?
Yes.
What are you talking about? No, listen to what I'm saying. And I say, no, but what about this? And the moment you redirect them, it disarms them. And if they intent on like just being heard, which is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Then they get frustrated and they might even like lose interest, or they might become rebellious in it. And that's where you need to kind of like strike a balance, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, let me hear what you have to say. Let me hear your argument. No, but it's not like that. Okay, well, tell me what it is. And I'll let them finish off and say, okay, now you're done? Is you sure?
Terrible.
And then when they're done, I say, okay, but what about this?
No. I want to argue with Zaid. I want to argue with him, but I'm telling you, his kids, if you are listening, I know it's hard to argue with this guy because he will flip your argument and you end up feeling really dumb for raising something with him. So yes.
But I mean, in my defense, it's not just because I'm trying to be clever or trying to like flip the script, right?
No.
It's that, like, okay, you're presenting me with a problem.
Yes.
And I'm asking you, have you considered this? Now, usually, if you're so distracted by the problem, you wouldn't have considered something else, right? And that's the whole point of a sounding board, of having healthy advisors and healthy engagement, is that, okay, I've broken my head on this. I can't figure it out. Tell me what I'm missing.
Yeah.
And then someone comes along and says, have you considered this? Like, oh my God, why didn't I even think of that?
Exactly.
Right? Which is exactly what the parent-child relationship is supposed to be about. It's like, let them feel heard, let them explain why it is that they understand things to be a certain way, and then prompt them to say, okay, well, yes, I can see why all of that seems to appear that way, but this is what you're not thinking about. This is what you're not seeing. And then that broadens their horizons, it broadens their thinking so that they can look at it and think, okay, well, next time I need to consider that.
Yeah.
And then here's where it gets really interesting, is that even if they don't like being wrong in that moment, the next time they experience that in their social circles and they see that playing out, it increases your credibility as an advisor.
You know, rebels, we like take it as a challenge. We like, there's something I can disarm him about. There must be something I can. It must be all fun and games. But yes, Zaid, your wisdom is truly something that we appreciate, and our listeners, from their responses. And the fact that after the show, people call in and they really, really want to have conversations with you, because it is rare to find people who are real, who have real conversations and are not afraid. Do you know, this is all things that's the truth that's got people going, oh my word, is that me? You know.
And that's the thing, right? That's our test. That's the moment of truth for us individually, is that if something resonates and it points out that I might have been wrong about something that I had no reason to believe I was wrong about. That's the moment of truth that tests your credibility and your integrity of the standard you hold yourself to. I ask people this all the time. What standard do you hold yourself to? And sometimes even elderly people, they don't realize that they don't hold themselves to a standard. They hold themselves to an external reference point.
Absolutely.
And that external reference point is religion or society or some or other structured kind of way of this is what is acceptable. When you hold yourself to a standard, that's when you see value in religion, for example, you must adopt that value as your personal value system, not as a religious subscription, right? Because then when it becomes your personal value system, you're holding yourself accountable because you believe in the value, in the benefit, in the goodness of why that's important, not doing it because you're avoiding hellfire.
Coach Zaid Zaid Ismail. I don't know why.
I don't even know who Zaid Sheikh is.
Neither do I. Sometimes the vocabulary, it matches in my head. It was a teacher who used to teach me at school, and I'm sure he's listening and thinking she made it somewhere. Surprisingly. But anyway, thank you so much, Zaid Ismail, Coach Zaid Ismail. We look forward to our exciting topics for next week. But thank you so much for your wisdom. You have definitely changed lives.
Alhamdulillah, I don't know what to say. I just appreciate being able to have this engagement, because I think we need more of this public engagement so that we can give people reason to believe that this fear and compliance approach to life, it's not the way. It's destroyed homes, it's destroyed generations, and now when we've got this woke generation that we have so much problems with, we need to realize it's because we didn't give them a grounding point that they felt was valuable.
I think this conversation could go on, and that's why we need our listeners to tune in. And please WhatsApp us on 077-280-4792. Next week, same time, same place, with Coach Zaid Ismail.